Welcome to the Voice of the Beginning, the Word of the Bible. Before we begin, help us spread the word. Subscribe to the channel, like, comment, and share with those you love.
Today, we're going to dive into a fascinating part of our spiritual journey, the Book of Exodus. After we witnessed the miraculous liberation from Egypt and the delivery of the Ten Commandments on Mount Sinai, you might think the story is over. But it's not. The real journey begins now as God gets ready to live among His people. Exodus chapters 21 and 22 introduce us to something that, at first glance, might just seem like a bunch of old laws. We're talking about slaves, property damage, and compensation for injuries. It might feel distant, but these laws have a much bigger purpose. They're not just rules for a society. They're the practical foundation for a people who committed to living under God's covenant. Our faith isn't just theoretical. It needs to have a real, tangible impact on how we treat one another. Justice, mercy, and making up for wrongs aren't optional. They're living proof that our covenant with God transforms our character and our actions. Just as God freed Israel from slavery, He expects us to be agents of freedom and justice in the lives of others. These chapters show us that our spirituality is tested in our daily lives, in how we handle life and relationships. Moving on to chapters 23 and 24, we see the covenant solidifying. Chapter 23 is a call to holiness in every aspect of life. God instructs Israel on social justice, Sabbath rest, and the importance of being a set-apart people. There are rules about not spreading false rumors, helping even your enemy, and observing the festivals. Chapter 24 is the climax of this section. We see Moses, Aaron, Nadab, Abihu, and 70 elders going up the mountain to see the God of Israel. It's a scene of deep reverence and communion. They eat and drink in God's presence. The covenant is sealed with the blood of animals, with half the blood sprinkled on the altar, and the other half on the people, symbolizing the union between God and His people. Our faith isn't just about laws. It's about a relationship. The covenant is a sacred agreement where God promises to bless us, and we promise to obey. Spiritually, this reminds us that obedience isn't a burdensome task, but a loving response to the one who freed us. The image of God eating with His people shows us the intimacy He desires to have with us. This scene points us to Jesus, the Lamb who would seal the new and eternal covenant with His own blood, giving us full access to God's presence. And now, the journey takes a new turn. Starting in chapter 25, the focus shifts from laws to worship. God begins giving Moses detailed instructions for building the tabernacle. The first thing He asks for is a voluntary offering from the people. The tabernacle wasn't going to be built with forced labor, but with the generosity of willing hearts. Every item in the tabernacle is described with divine precision. The Ark of the Covenant, the mercy seat, the pure gold lampstand, and the table of showbread. What does all of this mean for us today? It means that God is a God who desires to live with us, but He invites us to be active participants in building this place of meeting. The tabernacle is a metaphor for our own lives and for the church. It's the place where heaven and earth meet. Every detail, from the pure gold to the acacia wood, points to God's holiness and majesty. The Ark of the Covenant, holding the tablets of the law, the manna, and Aaron's rod, represents God's presence among His people. The lampstand, always lit, symbolizes God's light. These instructions show us that our worship isn't random. It should be intentional, beautiful, and above all, God-centered. In chapters 26 and 27, God continues to lay out the detailed architecture of the tabernacle. We see instructions for the curtains, the frames, the pillars, and the rings, all designed to be portable, reflecting God's nature to walk with His people. He's not a God confined to a static temple, but a God who is present in movement and on the journey. Chapter 27 describes the outer courtyard, the altar of sacrifice, and the basin for washing. These are the first points of contact for anyone entering. The altar of sacrifice reminds us that access to God's presence is only possible through atonement. The basin for washing reminds us of the need for purification. The journey toward God is a journey of progress. We enter through the courtyard, where we're reminded of our need for redemption and cleansing. Then we move into the holy place, and finally, into the Holy of Holies. It's a path of growing holiness. Every detail of the tabernacle invites us to consider God's holiness and our own need to approach Him in a pure and sincere way. The beauty and perfection of each piece remind us that God is worthy of our very best. Chapters 28 and 29 bring a new dimension to our journey, the priesthood. God instructs Moses to set apart his brother Aaron and his sons to serve as priests. We see the detailed description of their sacred garments. The ephod, the breastplate with 12 precious stones, representing the tribes of Israel, the sash, and the turban. The breastplate, in particular, has deep meaning. Engraved on it were the names of the tribes, and it held the Urim and Thummim stones, used to consult God's will. The priest carried the people on his heart before God. Chapter 29 describes the consecration ceremony for the priests, the washing, the anointing with oil, and the consecration sacrifices. The priesthood speaks to us about mediation. The priests were the bridge between the people and God. Their garments weren't just decorations, they were symbols of their sacred function to represent the people before God and God to the people. They point us to our great high priest, Jesus Christ. He's the only one who brings us into God's presence, and He carries us on His heart. The consecration ceremony reminds us that holiness is necessary to serve God, and that we are purified and set apart to be priests in a spiritual sense, bringing the light of Christ to the world. In chapter 30, the last leg of our journey today, God continues to give the final details for building the tabernacle and for the priestly service. He describes the altar of incense, a place for continuous prayer. He also talks about the bronze basin for the priest's purification, a constant reminder of the need to be cleansed before approaching God. God also establishes the ransom tax, an equal offering for everyone, rich or poor, to cover the tabernacle's services. This teaches us that before God, we're all equal, and our redemption has the same value. The big lesson from chapter 30 and this whole section of Exodus is that God yearns to live with us. The complex, detailed instructions aren't a burden, but a revelation of how seriously God takes His presence among His people. He is holy, and His presence requires holiness, order, and sincere worship. The tabernacle wasn't just a tent. It was the center of Israel's spiritual life, the place where God met with them face to face. So what can we take with us today? That our entire life is a tabernacle. Our worship should be intentional. Our holiness is the path to drawing near to God. And most of all, our faith is expressed in how we love and treat one another, in the justice we practice, and in the reverence we offer. May the story of Exodus from chapter 21 to 30 inspire us to build a place in our lives where God feels at home.
May this word take root in your spirit and guide your steps. If this message spoke to you, don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe.